That was the opening of Beethoven's Piano Sonata Opus 109, and it was performed by Paul Wee. I'm Erica Worth, and welcome to this Pianist podcast. Today I am speaking with barrister and concert pianist Paul Wee about his life at the piano, with a particular emphasis on his new recording of the late Beethoven sonatas on the BIS label. Paul, it's great to have you on the Pianist podcast today.
Thank you, Erica. It's great to be here and thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. What I'd like to do is step back a little in time first, because I know we're here to talk about your album of the late Beethoven sonatas. But first, for those listeners who don't know, Paul is a top London barrister working in commercial law. So I thought it'd be nice to start out by talking about your double life career, as it were. And when did you decide to really concentrate on the piano?
So, when I started to concentrate on the piano would probably have been as a child. I grew up thinking that that's what I wanted to be. I fell in love with the piano, with the music, with the literature at such at quite an early age, and it was my dream to be a pianist, a concert pianist, as far back as I can remember. But cutting a long story short, I thought to myself when it came to the end of my high school studies and I had to decide whether to go full time into music at a conservatory or to stay studying something else with music on the side. I thought about it for the first time and thought that as much as I loved the piano and the music, the life of a concert pianist, the realities that day to day that would involve probably would not be for me. So I decided at that stage to turn to the law.
Yeah.
And I always kept playing the piano. I knew that from the beginning. One of the great advantages of being a pianist, having the piano as your instrument, is that you can always play completely on your own. You don't need anyone else to make the literature, the repertoire accessible to you. I always continued to play concerts here and there right throughout the beginning of my legal practice up till now. I would play about 2 or 3 concerts a year, quite often in or around the Inns of Court or, in aid of various charities. So the piano was always part of my life, but in the background. Now, the events of the past few years have, I've been very fortunate in that they've seen the concerts that I've given and the projects that I've been taking on being a little more visible and high profile, but the sort of mix of things has remained unchanged.
Yeah, that's very interesting though, because obviously, so you decided piano, you're going to take piano seriously, but most people, it's like, I need an agent, I need a record label, but I don't know how it began with you and BIS Records, but you have a recording contract with them, and it's something that most pianists can only dream of. How did that come about?
Yeah, so that came about. Again, I'm just, it's a constant reminder of the role that luck plays in all of this. It came about following a recital I played in July 2016 for the Alcon Society. I played the Concerto for Solo Piano. And in the audience at that recital was Bryce Morrison, the
Yes.
famous critic and writer. And he came up to me afterwards and said, this is fantastic. Something needs to be done. We need to make a recording. And I said, well, I'd love to do that, but how? He put me in touch then. Bryce put me in touch with Mike Spring, formerly of Hyperion. Now he's a very close friend of mine. Mike helped me to make the recording. He said to me immediately up front, well, look, nobody is going to be interested in you just because I say to them or Bryce says to them, here's a great pianist who wants to make a recording of Alcon. No, no one will make that happen. It's not how the industry works. So Mike said, the way it works these days is that you have to make your own recording, finance your own recording, and then, we'll see what we've got. We'll see who might be interested in taking it. And that's exactly what we did. We made the first recording. We decided to pair Alcon's Symphony for Solo Piano alongside the Concerto for Solo Piano. Once the recording was finished, we sent it out. We sent it out to labels including BIS, where Mike knew that the hardest thing in all of this is having someone who will actually listen to what you send them. Everyone's time is precious. And again, everyone has so many demands on their time. Simply a recommendation saying, oh, this is great, you really must hear it, is almost always going to fall on deaf ears. But Mike knew that Robert von Bahr of BIS was different. He knew that Robert listens to what is sent into him. And that's exactly what happened. Robert listened, he liked what we heard, and he moved with amazing speed, not only to get the recording issued on BIS in a matter of months later that year, but also to lock in plans for future recordings, even all agreed before the outcome was even released. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it was a pretty extraordinary journey, and many things had to fall into place for that to happen the way that it did.
I mean, it is quite remarkable because, first of all, Alcan, that's a composer, a particular taste, isn't it? And then the next one was Thalberg's L'Art du Chant. I
Yeah.
mean, another work that, for piano files, you know, all your recordings have been really for piano files, not your
Yeah.
typical mainstream repertoire.
Well, in a way, and that has reflected the I guess the freedom that I both have, given my relationship with the piano. I don't need, for other music related reasons, to record whatever programs I would happen to be touring around with. I mean, you couldn't really tour around viably with a program of Thalberg.
No.
Uh, Also, it reflects what BIS has given me. All of these projects that I've suggested to BIS, and this is just, down to I'm immensely grateful to Biss and
Mm,
Robert for being willing to sort of indulge my suggestions, my tastes, and the third factor is that they reflect the works that I would have loved myself to have seen recorded, and that I therefore thought, well, I'd love to do it myself. So the
yeah.
Thalberg in particular was a set that I think it is a set still, that I think is very underserved in terms of recordings, and yet there's so much beautiful music written in there. I don't think it's not accessible. You have some transcriptions of very well-known arias from very well-known operas, some beautiful lieder in there. It is music that actually, incidentally, of all of my recordings, performs the best by some considerable margin on streaming platforms. So there
That's
is, absolute appeal to this music. But yes, it's a combination of those things, which until now have meant that what I have recorded is not necessarily your standard fare.
absolutely, and so that there were four, and now with this fifth recording, this latest, you have gone really in the different path. You've gone to Beethoven, the late piano sonatas. We most of us know them. Why have you suddenly gone on that path?
Yeah. So I'll start by making one observation, which is to suggest that it might not be uh, as radical a shift as it may first seem, and then I'll
Mm.
answer the question directly. It is the first time that I am recording Beethoven in the original, but it isn't the first time that I'm recording very core mainstream repertoire Beethoven, for instance. And for instance, the recording in which I pair Liszt's transcription of the Eroica Symphony with Alcon's transcription of the Mozart D minor concerto. I mean, put aside the transcription elements of this, these are two of the most core mainstream monuments of the classical literature. So it isn't, I would suggest, my first foray into the field. But of course, when we talk about Beethoven in the original, it is, and there is a little bit of a story there, if you'll indulge me.
Mm.
So, after the Henselt and the Bronzart disc, Biss and I sat down to chat about future projects, and we agreed on a provisional list of six. Now, the late sonatas, they were on that list. I had proposed them myself, as I had found myself drawn to them more and more over the preceding years. I mean, in a way, the works, they don't need any justification. They're some of the most extraordinary utterances in all of music, for specifically for their searing humanity. I've known them and I've played them for years, all of them privately, some of them in concert. None of them were at all new or unfamiliar to me. But although they were on the list, we hadn't planned for them to be up next. What actually happened is that we had recording sessions planned for March 2024 for a different project. But then my wife and we learned the very happy news that our second baby would be arriving in December 2023.
Oh.
And I knew that with a newborn baby at home, I would not be ideally placed to prepare the other planned repertoire for those March 2024 sessions. And rather than cancel them, I thought, we should go ahead, but let's go ahead instead with music that I'm much more familiar with, that I knew much better. So we decided to use those sessions instead to record Opus 109, 110, and 111. And although it was originally for practical reasons, there was also something that felt, substantively very right about this. There is a way in which, holding a newborn baby in your arms, that rhythm of the first few days and weeks and months where time just sort of dissolves around you, and you cradle them as they sleep, you watch in awe as they discover the world around them for the very first time. Let me put it this way. I felt that approaching this incredible music from that sort of day-to-day place of wonder and awe, I felt that was an enormous privilege. I'm definitely not saying that that's the only way to approach these sonatas. Of course it's not. It's nothing that Beethoven himself ever experienced. But for me, immersing myself in this music, it touches the deepest nerves, I think, of what it means to be human. It's got some of the most vulnerable bearing of souls, the most aching tenderness. A lot of that just felt right at that point in time in my life. And so it was that combination, as I say, of practical
Mm.
circumstances, but also, this resonance I felt and I still feel between, the magic of those early months and immersing myself, headlong into this music that has, yeah, led to where we are now.
Oh, that's absolutely wonderful. And when were the recording dates again? When were you in the studio?
Yeah, so we did Opus 109, 110, and 111 in March 2024, and then we returned back later that year, November 2024, to the same venue at Wyerstone to do Opus 101 and 106.
Goodness. And in between then, you gave your Wigmore Hall debut.
Yeah, yeah, it was quite a busy year for me musically, 2024. That was in June 2024, yeah.
Absolutely. And how did that feel, a debut at the Wigmore Hall? Did you ever in your wildest dreams think you'd be giving a debut, playing at the Wigmore Hall?
No, is the short answer. I absolutely didn't. And that made it, you hear these words a lot, but it was quite literally a dream come true. As a concert goer, it's my favorite venue in London. I've had so many wonderful, transformative musical experiences there over the years, sitting in the audience. And yeah, the thought had never really occurred to me that one day it might be me up there. And yeah, it's a memory and experience that I will absolutely treasure. And I'm looking forward, hopefully, to there being more to come.
Okay. And nerves? Were you nervous?
Yes, definitely, definitely. I always have an element of nerves before any kind of performance, I should say, whether we're talking about court or on the stage. It's fair to say that being at Wigmore, and especially immediately beforehand, whether it's in the green room or waiting in the wings to go on, it's fair to say that that probably amplified it a little. But I have always enjoyed that sort of thrill of performing because that's what it is. It's the other side of that coin. And as I say, whether it's the day job or whether it's as a pianist, it's part of what makes
Yeah.
every occasion magical and fun. I would use the word fun. And we all wonder sometimes, are we do we feel this way? Do we have these nerves because, well, in a word, imposter syndrome? Is it because, we're about to get found out or we're not sure we've done the preparation? But
Hmm.
then you think to yourself, we've all read the stories about Horowitz sometimes being so nervous that he would have to be pushed physically out onto the stage.
Hmm.
And in my day job as well, I've heard from some of the most brilliant barristers, KCs at the commercial bar, that they too always have nerves before hearings. And I find that reassuring.
Well, it's so interesting because, you're up there at a hearing performing
Mm.
and you're on stage at the Wigmore performing. So there are slight similarities there. You obviously like performing.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think there are actually, very many similarities between the two. And it's part of what keeps things fun, it is the culmination of so much preparation on
Mm.
both sides. And then, but when it comes to it, when you stand up in court, when you go out on stage, that's when it matters. It doesn't matter how many times you've got it right in the practice room if it doesn't come out the way you want it to on stage. It doesn't matter
Mm.
how hard you've prepared, rehearsed in your head how the hearing's going to go if the witness says something completely unexpected, or if the judge asks you a question that you haven't at all considered. It's what keeps it fun.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating. Do you have any safety? I mean, with regards to performing, getting nervous beforehand, is there anything you do beforehand to calm yourself down?
Not really, not really. I haven't had any rituals, whether practical or purely, psychological. It's yeah, nothing over the years has built up.
Okay. Um, I'm looking at your when you were young, who you studied with, and I've just realised that we both share the same piano teacher at some point in our lives, don't we? In
Yeah,
Manhattan.
absolutely. Nina Svetlana, who I absolutely adore, and I miss her very much.
Yeah, you were in pre-college at Manhattan School of Music.
Yeah, that's right. From 2001 to 2005, I went there on Saturdays alongside my regular high school studies as well.
Fantastic. And what did you think she taught you, Svetlana?
Ah, well, so she taught me, I would say she gave me the foundations, completely new foundations for my approach to the keyboard, my keyboard technique, if we want to use that shorthand. I turned up at Nina's studio thinking that, I knew my way around the piano. I thought I was a pretty nifty pianist. I was ready to bring her big pieces, big repertoire that I wanted to charge through with her, very much as a hot-headed, teenager in high school in New York. Instead, she saw what I had done, how I was currently playing, and she brought me right back to basics. She brought me right back to basics. She assigned me, movements from works that I had first played as a child. And I thought to myself, well, what's going on here? What's going on here? Um, And in the time that I had with her, which, extraordinarily looking back, I was only with her for 2 years, actually. I was only with her for 2 years. It was a very short period. She completely transformed my piano technique from top to bottom and put it on, I would say, for the very first time, she introduced me to a principled approach of what it means to use your hands, your body, your arms, everything to navigate the keyboard. My previous teachers, I think, were giving me technical advice on a much more sort of surface oriented level, but she was the one who, for the very first time, brought me right back to square one. And with hindsight, that was invaluable because what it enabled me to do, because she'd given me the foundations, the fundamentals, I was able to keep working from
Mm.
them on the basis of what she taught me to keep advancing my own understanding of technique, mechanics, uh, for many, many years after I stopped having regular lessons with her. And it is entirely thanks to her that I have the technique that I have today. And that includes, I have to say, because what she taught me about having an understanding of piano technique that resides in the mind as a matter of principle, it's meant that I have never needed to say, sit down at a piano for 1 or 2 hours every day to practice just to keep things going. Instead, I'm able to go for weeks at a time without touching a piano, without playing a piano, and I can pick up where I left off. And that has been invaluable for me because I've needed that. The day job often means that
Of
I
course.
don't get to touch a piano for, a very, very long time. And I owe all of this to what she gave me.
That is remarkable. I mean, the fact that you can go back to the piano 4 weeks later and not feel like you've been away from it, really. That's remarkable.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I
I
need
mean,
to
of
talk.
course, a lot of that, the other part of that is that even if I haven't been touching the piano, physically touching the piano, I mean,
Yes.
I I do always have the piano, its music in my mind, and whether you might think to use the formal term, practicing away from the keyboard or just something
Yes.
general, it is never the case that I'll go for weeks without a time without thinking about the piano or thinking about playing the piano.
Yes. And I mean, when you're at somebody else's concert, like I know tonight, we will both be attending Arkady Volodos at the Barbican. I'm a special pianist indeed. When you're sitting there listening to him, obviously, I would have thought you'll come away thinking, I should try that. Oh, I like what he does here. Do you sometimes think, bring that back to your own playing, your own
Oh,
technique?
absolutely. Absolutely. It's a constant process and something that we are so privileged in London to have, this never-ending stream of the greatest pianists in the world always coming to play. And of course, you go to listen, I go to listen to other people as often as I can. It's fair to say I used to go to many more concerts than I do these days because the children have arrived and life is a lot more complicated. But yes, always I go to hear other pianists. It's not with the primary aim of going and thinking, what can I take away from them? But
Mm,
just because, as I say, I love the piano. I love music. I've always been going to concerts for the sheer joy of it. But yes, every now and then you'll hear a pianist, especially playing a work that you think that you know very well, and you will just be blown away by what you hear others do with them, and you can't help but think of experimenting. I mean, some of the works that Volodos is playing this evening are some of the absolute works that have been very, very dear to my heart for years. So I'm
yes.
really excited to hear him. But of course, the other side of the coin is that when we're talking about specifically pianists like Volodos, and there are, there are very few that can be spoken of in the same way as him. It's all fine and well saying, "Oh, I'd love to take what Volodos does in those bars and do it myself," but no, not in a million years. Not in a million years.
No. And we're all unique, aren't we? And he is Volodos, and that's what makes him so special. And you are
Absolutely.
you.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, what I like also is your philosophy as a pianist. Once you said to me that you're 95% a listener rather than a performer. You like being in the audience, that you feel, is that true? You're more inclined towards that direction?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that that's just a description of my relationship with music. I am far more often the one sitting in the audience or listening to new recordings than I am the one on stage. I mean, it reflects the very small number of concerts I give in comparison. It's the setting with music that I
Hmm.
spend more time within.
Mm. Yeah, I get it. I heard you play the Rachmaninoff Third with the Fidelio Orchestra in June, this June. Would you like, and it was great, it was fantastic. Would you like to do more concerto appearances?
Oh, yeah, yeah, absolutely. In fact, I just played another Rachmaninoff third the other day, on Sunday, with the Royal Orchestral Society, conducted by Rebecca Miller. And that also was just a total joy. That was at Duke's Hall at the Royal Academy of Music.
Oh,
And yeah, I'd love to play more concertos. I mean, there are just, again, it's it's my love of the literature. There are so many incredible piano concertos out there, and although you can, of course, have
yeah.
some fun playing the solo parts on your own, it's never the same thing as bringing them to life with an orchestra. And there's such a breadth of concertos out there that I would adore to do. It's just, yeah,
Mm.
I
Mm.
I would love that.
Do you think you need an agent for that? Do you have an agent?
I don't have an agent. I suppose in theory an agent would be the conventional way to get more, well, concert appearances generally, or more concerto appearances specifically. But I don't have an agent, and I'm not
Mm.
sure that that would be a likely path for me.
No.
I am not looking to play as many concerts as possible. I'm only able to play a small number. And when my musical activities and my musical intentions are put in that light, it's not obvious to me that it would make commercial sense for an agent to take me on.
No. They'll be wanting to book you constantly, and you just don't have the time in your diary.
Absolutely right. And I have been very fortunate so far that I've been able in recent years to secure
Mm.
some very, wonderful performance opportunities on my own without an agent, and I will be a very happy man if that can continue.
Yeah, well, you seem to have the perfect life balance, career balance. It's amazing.
It might look like that from the outside. It feels more like a constant state of chaos on the on the
Really?
inside.
You
Well,
never
yeah,
know
I
it.
mean, to be honest, balancing the law and music, it used to be quite straightforward, quite simple. Uh, I would take I would take on a musical commitment, a concert, for instance, put it in the diary, and I would treat it in the diary in the same way as any other legal professional commitments. I'm a self-employed barrister, so I can have a degree of control over what I do. I don't have
Mm.
any management or bosses looking over me and saying, "Oh, no, 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 what are you doing? You can't take time off to spend preparing for a piano recital." Of course, my cases have ongoing commitments. My clients have ongoing needs for advice and so on. So you're never completely free either. But I was able to put something in my diary, figure out in exactly the same way as I do for legal commitments what sort of time will be needed to prepare for this, what do I need to set aside to get ready, and manage the diary accordingly. And it all rumbled on very, very happily. In that way for a while. Of course, what threw a great spanner in the works is having children, because that it means your time is no longer your own, and
Yes.
then you cannot just take the 24 hours of the day and use them as you would like. It's a different ball game,
Yeah.
and it's, yes, as I say, a perpetual state of chaos. But we're working it out. We're working it out.
Oh, well, yeah, you need to take parenting seriously, of course, and I can see that you do.
Well, we try. We try.
Oh, oh. Well, let's get on to now. We're coming towards the end, so I thought we'd get on to something a little bit more simple and light-hearted. I'm going to throw some questions at you, and if you can answer them off the cuff, that'll be great. So
Absolutely.
here is the first one. If you could play only one composer from now on, who would it be?
Mm. I would say Schubert, if I am allowed to keep, for instance, his songs, the leader, even without just having that as part of it, being able to play that, stick on the vocal line on top, maybe with a fifth finger. But yeah, Schubert.
Oh, how come?
There is everything in his music that is so purely crafted, manifested
Mm,
in a way in which the way that he expresses it, the nature of his writing, it is so transparent to the musical intention. And there is no difficulty for the sake of difficulty. There is no florid virtuosity. Now, these are not things that I inherently disapprove of, as you'll know from my discography.
mm.
But it is just some of the purest form of expression, musical expression, that there is, and it means that his music often hits me that much harder than anyone else's.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, okay. Next question. One pianist, dead or alive, you travel long and far to hear.
I would have loved to have heard Chopin.
Mm,
All of the accounts of his playing, his phrasing, his pedaling, his dynamics, his poetry, his manner of it. Put it this way, we are all these days, to some extent, descendants of Liszt and the way that Liszt approached the piano. Of course, that's far to say that any of us have the magnetism, the charisma, the personality of Liszt that lifted his concerts to the stratosphere and beyond. But I think there is a lot of modern pianism that we would recognize from Liszt, Talberg, so on. But Chopin appears from the eyewitness accounts, and there are so many written down to have been something else altogether. And he is the one that I would most have liked to have heard.
Okay, excellent. One person, dead or alive, you'd love to play for?
I would love to be able to play one more time for our former teacher, Nina Svetlanova. I would love to be able to play her, share with her my late Beethoven, Opus 110 in particular, which I know was a very, very close work to her heart.
Oh, Opus 110 is amazing. Oh, that's sweet. Maybe, oh, that's a lovely answer. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I used to go back to New York a lot more often when my brother used to live there, and I would see her from time to time and play for her
Oh,
maybe once every 5 years. But she
gosh,
passed away within the last couple of years,
absolutely. Yeah.
and I'm very sad that that door is no more.
Oh, so you'd go back every 5 years and play for her, or just
Yeah,
see her?
yeah, sometimes more for regular than 5 years, but from time to time.
Wonderful. Well, that's very special. Um, do you have any technical struggles with the piano?
Yeah, many, many of them. But one that I think will always be beyond me for reasons that are non-negotiable would be very large intervals. I don't have Richter size hands, so anything that goes beyond white key to white key tenths, I can do, for instance, C to E.
Okay.
But that's at the very edge of what I'm able to do. And if you're looking at certain pieces where you have intervals of that width that are filled in with notes in between and at speed, that can
Ooh,
sometimes be done, but it's quite tricky. I cannot go beyond, so I can't do tenths like A flat to C, F
yeah.
sharp to A sharp, D to F sharp, and that does put certain works, some composers off limits. Now,
Oh,
there are many, many tricks that you can do that will help you to create the illusion of hitting those at once. I'm not just talking redistribution. Obviously, if you can bring in one hand to help the other, that's the problem solved. But for instance, when you're playing composers like Thalberg, who had enormous hands, and his works, including L'Arc du Chant, are full of these deep, ultra luxurious, tenths. Uh, you need to find a way to overcome them. And listeners to my Tolberg who have the score in front of them will see the sorts of things that I am attempting to navigate. It can be done in music that, as is the case with many of those transcriptions, is slower in tempo, so on and so forth. But the moment you encounter that sort of
mm.
writing in more physical, more up-tempo passages, I'm out of the game.
No, you're right, because you haven't really got the time to roll a chord, have you, if you're playing
Absolutely, absolutely.
prestissimo? Yeah.
And that means, for instance, that some works that I would otherwise have loved to play, I don't think I can execute at a level that I will ever be satisfied with. So, for instance,
Mm.
the Liszt transcription of the Pastoral Symphony of Beethoven is not something that I'll be turning to.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so you've obviously read it and thought,
Oh yeah, I've read
gosh,
through quite a lot, all of the nine, and many others, but that
that's
one won't be for
amazing.
me.
That's amazing. Are you a good sight reader?
I'm all right, yeah, I'm all right. I would say where my sight reading isn't so strong is in open scoring, whether it
Mm.
is sight reading from a conductor's score or just, four-part chorales, each in their own stave. But where we're looking at music, conventionally written for the piano 1, 2, or sometimes three staves, I'm generally all right.
Yes, okay.
I think for full orchestral score reading, that's where if I had gone to conservatory and studied conducting, for instance, that would have been a huge help. But I can't
Yes,
pretend I
keyboard
can't pretend to
skills.
do that at sight.
No, but I can understand that. What would be your advice to an amateur pianist about how to improve?
The answer starts almost always by listening back to yourself. Listen back to yourself. Uh, Quite a lot of the time,
Mm.
you will find that what you think you do well might not actually sound as well as you think it does. And conversely, what you don't think you do well sounds rather better than you imagined.
Mm.
It's for amateur pianists in particular, and I speak as one myself, you will decide for yourself what you think are your priorities. What are the aspects of pianism, of piano playing that you love most? If what makes your heart sing is beautiful tone production, then again, listening back to yourself play, both in the moment, but record yourself as well. These days with an iPhone, it's easier than ever to stick something
Yes.
on and hear what you've done. And that is where you will really know what you need to do.
Very wise words. My next question, slightly different for you because you already do have another career, but it is, if you weren't a pianist, what would you be?
Well, yeah, I guess I have to say I would be a barrister, a self-employed barrister. Self-employment bit is important, but a self-employed barrister playing the piano on the side.
Okay, that was a good one. Finally, one composer you're not quite ready to tackle.
Oh, that's interesting. Do you mean musically or specifically as a pianist?
As a pianist, I would have thought, yeah.
As a pianist. Interesting. Well, that's really putting me on the spot because there are so many composers whose works I just adore. Um, but as a pianist, one composer I'm not quite ready to tackle.
It could be you don't have an affinity, I don't know.
It's really quite it's fascinating. I by no means love everything that everybody wrote, but the flip side of that is that I find so much to admire in some parts. There's almost always something I love. There's almost always a weakness. Works that I do adore. I will fight for. I will give a go,
Hmm.
even if it's not those of the usual suspects. Um,
Well, you don't have to answer. I mean,
let me let me let
Prokofiev.
me let me do it from the
Prokofiev.
musical perspective because
Yeah.
there is an easier example I think that might communicate what I mean by a lot of this. So, for instance, a composer I'm not quite ready to tackle as a listener would be, for instance, Bruckner. I haven't yet had my moment with Bruckner. I know that the music is great. I know there is so much joy and satisfaction and beauty to be found there. I haven't cracked it myself. I've given it a go. I've given it a few goes. Um, but it is not yet music that has struck home to me.
Okay.
I know that it well. I absolutely know that it well. And the other thing is that I'm in no hurry. Life is,
Of
well,
course.
life is short, but we don't have to rush out there and consume everything all at once now. And I'm ready to wait and to bide my time. I'm ready to wait and bide my time. And yeah,
Fair enough. Yeah, I think that's a fair answer. That's fine.
maybe then. Okay, I can thinking about that go back to one composer I'm not quite ready to tackle from the pianistic perspective. It's not because I don't love the music. It is more because I find the music difficult to play in a way that I would find interpretatively satisfying in the long run. Interpretations that would withstand multiple listenings.
Mm.
And that is quite a lot of Schumann. I mean, I adore the music. I mentioned earlier that, for instance, Volodos is playing David's
Yeah.
Wundertanz this evening, and that is absolutely one of the works that's closest and so dear to my heart. But so many of the works of his that I admire, they are so overwrought with intensity and passion, and that's part of what makes them so fun. And yet, navigating that world, that emotional world, not just giving up to it, submitting to it in the moment, and letting all of those extremities uh, fly off the keyboard, but harnessing those into something that, as I say, will withstand repeated listening, which is what you have to do, I think, as a performer these days. Uh,
Mm.
it's a very difficult balance to strike.
Yes, I understand that.
And again, I'm not saying never. I very much hope that one day I'll turn to so many of these works that I love. But it's something that at the moment I confess I would feel very intimidated to take on properly.
I understand. Yeah. Well, listen, we've come to the end and we've got some Schumann for you to enjoy tonight, haven't we, with Volodos? Maybe he'll change your mind.
Oh, well, if I could play it like he does, then.
Oh, well, Paul, it's been a real pleasure having you on the podcast today.
No, it's been a joy to chat with you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm sure listeners will have taken away a lot of interesting info from you. So thank you again, and I look forward to speaking to you and listening to you in the future. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Erica.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.
That was the scherzo from Beethoven's Hammer Clavier Sonata Opus 106, and it was performed by Paul Wee. Pianist podcasts are free, and a really good way to support what we do is by subscribing to Pianist. Visit our website at pianistmagazine.com and listen to us on YouTube by searching Pianist Magazine. And don't forget to sign up to our newsletter, which is full of extra playing tips and useful information. Go to pianistmagazine.com to find out how to sign up.